Testing. Perfect. Pardon me? Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to begin our services here today. We'll ask you to please rise at this time as the casket is going to be brought forward. So I believe on this side is the side for the honor guard, and this side will be for the family. This time you may be seated. We welcome all of you here today to show respects for Alan Roy Field, to comfort the family, and to be with us here at this time to commemorate his life in what we hope will truly be a celebration of spirit. For those of you here new and here for the first time, my name is Rabbi David Barnett, and I'm very honored to be with us here today. I'm the rabbi here of Temple Torat Yisrael. I would like to begin our services here in honor and in memory of Alan by first chanting from Psalm 121. This is a very beautiful psalm speaking of God's presence around us at all times as a source of inspiration, strength, and comfort. I'll chant it first in Hebrew just to give us a feeling, a setting for this, and then give a translation in English. Esa enai el heharim, me'ayin yavo ezri, ezri me'im Adonai, ose shamayim va'aretz, aliten lamut raglecha, al yanum shomrecha, hine lo yanum velo yishan, Shomer Yisrael, Adonai Shomrecha, Adonai Tzilcha al yad yaminecha, Yomam HaShemesh lo yakeka, ve'areach v'alayla, Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra, yishmor et nafshecha, Adonai yishmor tzeitcha uvoecha me'ata ve'ad olam. I will lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? The source of my help is the Lord, creator of heaven and earth. He will not let you falter. Your guardian does not slumber. Surely the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. He is at your right hand to protect you. The Lord, your keeper, gives shelter. The sun will not smite you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will guard you from all harm. The Lord will preserve your soul. He will guard your going and coming from this time forth and forever. And I'd like to share a few other passages from our tradition, giving us thoughts of inspiration, hope, and comfort at this time of loss. From Psalm 73, my flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart. He is my portion forever. And from Isaiah chapter 41, fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will sustain you through my power. Alan was a man who had integrity, who always had a sincere and humble spirit. I was honored and privileged to have met him on a number of occasions. Never really had a chance to get to know him as well as I would have liked to. But when I first came, I was greeted by him, and Lynn, and Michael, and Sharon, and so many others, and met him at that time. I would like to share at this time the words of Psalm 15 with you that I think in many ways speak of the way he was. O Lord, who shall dwell in your sanctuary? Who shall abide upon your holy mountain? He who lives with integrity, does what is right, and speaks the truth in his heart, who has no slander upon his tongue, who does no evil to his fellow man, who does not reproach his neighbor. In his eyes a vile person is despised, but he honors those who revere the Lord. He takes an oath even to his own harm and does not change. He does not lend money at usurious interest. He does not take a bribe against the innocent. Whoever does these things shall stand firm forever. And an inspirational thought from the prophet Malachi. True instruction was on his lips, and he did not give voice to unrighteousness. He walked with the Lord in peace, uprightly, and he turned many away from iniquity. In many ways, Alan struck me as a man who just had a quiet, kind of unassuming dignity. And I'd like to share a selection from the apocryphal literature, from the Wisdom of Solomon, as my concluding introductory reading here, because sometimes we forget that chronology is not the only source of meaning in our lives. A righteous man, though he dies before his time, shall be at rest. For an honored old age does not depend upon length of time, nor is it measured by the number of one's years. For understanding is gray hair for man, and a blameless life is old age. Being perfected in a little while, he fulfilled long years, for his soul pleased the Lord. It's just sort of my personal custom to try to make our service a little warmer by mentioning the first names here of our immediate family and sometimes friends. So certainly to Lynn, to Michael and Sharon, to Cheryl. I didn't get to meet personally Cheryl yet. Cheryl, will you raise your hand so I know who you are? Okay, good. I've heard about you and your loving attentions there. And we'll talk more about, you're going to be coming up more later because you're crucial in the family. But basically, I didn't have a chance, thank you, to meet you personally. And then we have the children, Adam and Diane, Daniel, Rachel and Kurt, and then Ryan, Brendan, and Lauren and Abstentia. And then I want to mention Laura and Matt, Amanda, and then grandchildren. I want to get to have the grandchildren raise their hands. This is the pride and treasure. So just a second. Let's do it in order of appearance. We have Elijah, good, okay, and Jonah, great, and then Olivia, wonderful, and then Emma, yes, hi Emma, and then in abstention we're going to mention Jackson and Lindsay, family and friends. Alan was born in Providence on May 13th, 1949, and it happened to have been on Friday the 13th. But 13 is a good number in the Jewish tradition. And interestingly, there was a sense of almost a poetic framework here for Alan's life. He passed away this last April 13th on the Thursday there, 1 month shy of his birthday. He would have been 74 next month. He initially attended Summit Avenue School, and normally I wouldn't mention the names of the schools, even the elementary schools. But Rhode Island is so compact and close that everyone knows everyone else. So you know these schools, you've heard these names. Summit Avenue School, and then in those years they went on to the Nathan Bishop Junior High, and then the family moved to Pawtucket, and they attended Samuel Slater Junior High, and then went on to the Pawtucket West Senior High, and from which they graduated. And then Alan went on to college for 1 year at Bryant in Providence, and then attended Roger Williams College in Providence. He graduated with a BA in Business Administration. Now, before entering college even, he had gained some work experience during summer jobs, working in the hardware industry. And as we'll see, that motif would really be with him his entire life. After graduating from Roger Williams, he worked at the Randall Hardware in Providence. Now, in 1974, he got married to Cheryl Snell in Providence at Temple Emmanuel. And Adam was born in 1977, followed later by Daniel and Rachel. This was a Jewish man who could fix things, which is quite a good thing, quite a good skill. I can't claim to be. We have some people who can do that in our congregation and do it very well, but I can't claim to be in that elite minority. So nonetheless, after college in 1977, they went ahead and bought Randall in partnership with Michael, and he operated that for some 18 to 19 years. And then they closed the business and went into the other areas. Now, while still in business with the hardware, they had opened up another business called Randall Wall Covering on an adjacent location that they purchased. And they operated those businesses and then ended up both closing them at around the same time, around 1995, and then went into business again, initially along with his brothers again. And this time, Barry was involved at that time. Such a tragic loss, his passing years ago. But while he was vital there, he was in partnership with them. In other words, Barry and Michael and Alan opened Gold's Gym in Pawtucket. Now, around 1999 to 2000, Alan decided that he wanted to have a career change of direction. And so after a while, he transitioned back into the hardware industry, back into hardware products, home hardware products. And he became a top representative for E.A. Langenfeld, and top sales rep to the large chains which we all know about: Lowe's, Home Depot, Ace Hardware, True Value, all of the big names. And he was an outstanding representative for them. And he also was able to do some traveling at this time. really primarily initially through the New England territory, although eventually through attending various trade shows, he would really go all over the country with the various travel and trade shows. Meanwhile, going back to around 1993, unfortunately, the marriage with Cheryl ended. However, and they got divorced. However, it ended amicably, and it was so touching to learn of how she was so attentive to him, even in the final moments of his life in the hospital. Now, Alan continued working, and then 3 years later, around 1996, met Lynn. And she shared with me that I could share with you how they met, which is really very, we're going to use the term for its day, avant-garde. They were ahead of the times. They met through the JewishCommunity.com original dating platform. And they connected there, and how special that was. And it was successful because in 2004, they went and ended up getting married together. And there's an interesting side note to this story. They're having a dialogue upstairs on this right now as we speak. Both mothers, that's Lynn's mother and Alan's mother, had passed away before Lynn and Alan met. But the parents knew each other, and the mothers were in Hadassah together. Now, it turns out that the Fields had a home in Narragansett. And Lynn's mother, Tech, may she rest in peace, when she was driving often with Lynn, I don't think she asked the sister this question, but she would always be asking Lynn if she knew the Field twins. And then Lynn would always answer, "Mom, it's not me." And little could she have known that indeed in the future they would meet each other online, get married, and go on to this illustrious history. So that was really I think that's very romantic. I think it's a very beautiful story. Alan would continue to work until 2018 when he retired from E.A. Langenfeld, and at that time essentially became fully retired. Now, we come up to really 2020, and unfortunately, he needed to have a double bypass. But fortunately, he was able to have that in Boston at Brigham and Women's Hospital before the intensity of the COVID epidemic rolled out in March. The surgery was successful. And since the surgery essentially was in January, 2 months before the intensification in March, yes, the rehab got messed up a little bit, but he survived and came through. Following a subsequent diagnosis of Parkinson's disease as a strong fighter, he really was a fighter. He fought. He bravely endured many subsequent complications, leading to his passing just this last Thursday, April 13th, at I think around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was just going to go. I was rushing to. Lynn had contacted me. I was just rushing to go see him, and just missed that. But he was a brave fighter. During this last month, he kept his illness really quite private. He wasn't able to see really many visitors at all. It was really his. He just needed his strength every minute of every day. So if any of you think, "Oh, I wish I'd been able to see him in the hospital," don't worry. Don't feel guilty on that. It was really a necessity to keep that private at that time. But focusing on some of the things he loved to do. He loved photography, and he would go out into the nature reserves and take picture of birds. And there's some beautiful birds around here. And he would go to the beach, and he was a family photographer. So he loved to go to all of the family events. He got his digital camera, and he used his computer skills to edit his photography. And you'll hear more about this from some of the other speakers here. But he just loved electronic gadgets. He was able to somehow work with all of this. First and foremost, also, he just loved being with his children and grandchildren. He really was a family man in the best sense of the word and the phrase. And he just loved the family events. With Lynn, he was able to travel to Florida and take several cruises. They went to the Caribbean. mostly U.S.-based traveling, and he always enjoyed going to Georgia to visit Brendan and their children. He loved to, in better days, he loved to be able to eat. And in particular, he loved Italian food. And one of his favorites, this was new to me last night because I'm from the West Coast, hasn't made the migration over there yet, but he loved the American chop suey. I was joking with the family. Usually things come from the West Coast, often in California, to migrate to the East. But that's one that has to make its way west. He used to play golf in earlier years and really enjoyed doing that. Now, in terms of some of his character and personality, and you're going to hear this really elucidated in a more familiar way with the speakers following me, but he had strong opinions, I was told. He knew what he liked and he knew what he didn't like. And first and foremost, as we shared here, he was very, very dedicated to his mom and his family as a whole. Being Jewish was very important to Alan. He was, in earlier years, a men's club president, very, very special. And he served through the present time on the board of directors for Temple Torat Yisrael. He was also a member of the Turo Fraternal Association, a Jewish fraternal association, and received a commendation from that. And in particular, also through the New England Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs, he received the Keeper of the Flame Award on a beautiful plaque, and I wish they held that up for me last night. And it was really, really very, very special to see. And so we look on the broader picture of Alan's life here, and what do we see? We see a life of love, a life of dedication, a life of responsibility, a life of commitment, a life of love for his children. In many ways, he did everything. He was a father. He was a grandfather. He held himself up with dignity and had dignified work successfully in several lines of work. He was a contributor to the community. He remembered his spiritual roots. And all that is really, in so many ways, the ideal of what we hope we can be. So, in the tradition of our rabbis and teachers, we could say, Yehi zichrono livracha, may his memory be for a blessing. And we would pray, Tehi nishmato tzura b'tzora chayim, may his soul be bound up in the bond of life, that bond connecting all of the generations, past, present, and future. And we can say, Amen. Now, at this time, it's very, very special to call upon each of his three children to come up together. They're going to come up together. It's always very beautiful. I was sharing with the family last night. We were working till quite late, by the way. And they shared so much with me. And I said it's always so moving, emotionally moving, when we can call siblings to stand up with each other at a time of loss like this and give each other moral support as they share thoughts from their heart. So at this time, I'd like to call upon Rachel Labudi, and Daniel and Adam to come forward here and share some thoughts and remarks with you. Yeah, I think this would be good.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel, Alan's daughter. I want to thank you all for being here to celebrate my dad's life. I did not think that I would be dealing with the death of a parent so soon. As mentioned, my dad passed away on April 13th, exactly 1 month before his 74th birthday. My dad went through a lot over these last 2.5 months. Looking back at the time, we wanted nothing more but for him to get better, yet I knew it was going to be an uphill battle. As we know, our dad was a stubborn man, and there were many days he wanted to give up, and I believe he continued to fight not for himself, but for the deep love of his family. To my stepmom, Lynn, I cannot thank you enough for being the most amazing support system that my dad could ever have. You were there with him day after day, making sure he had the best care possible while also being his best advocate. The way my dad looked at you for comfort and reassurance was truly special. Anything my dad asked for, you brought him without hesitation. Your unwavering devotion for him, I will always remember. Uncle Michael, thank you. I will never know what it is like to have a twin, but you and my dad had that bond that no one will ever know. We all know that our dad always had a love for food. Unfortunately, that was not the case these last couple of months, but when my dad asked for a meatball sub, you got him a meatball sub from none other than Twin Oaks. Anything else he asked for, you brought. It brought me comfort knowing that you were there with him during this time, and at the end you said, I know he is not suffering, because if he was suffering, I would be suffering too. And that gave me comfort in knowing that he went peacefully. Lastly, I would like to thank my mom, Cheryl. It is rare to have the dynamics that my family does. My mom was at the hospital with my dad whenever she had the chance. There are not many people that can do what my mom did to help my dad feel comfort. Well, I know that my dad gave her a tough time and yelled at her for making him take his medicine. One of the last things he did was blow her a kiss. He knew my mom only wanted the best for him. My mom and Lynn were both by his side during his passing, and that is truly special. My dad loved me and my brothers so much. He may have not always known how to say it, but his actions showed it. My dad worked hard in his lifetime. I have fond memories as a kid going to Randall Hardware and helping him out at his store. He taught me a lot, and I know how proud he was to have my brothers and me with him. My dad always wanted to be around his family. He was so proud of his children and the adults we were becoming. He beamed from ear to ear on my wedding day. He was so proud walking me down the aisle and dancing our father-daughter dance. He always loved the song Butterfly Kisses, and that's what we danced to. I always had a dream during my wedding to break out in some sort of choreographed dance. I mentioned it to my dad, and he said yes without hesitation. During our slow dance, the music changed and we busted out some moves. He was such a good sport learning the dance before him, and it went off without a hitch. I watch that video each year, but it'll be a little bit more special the next time I watch it. So I thought my dad loved me a lot until the day he became a grandfather. He has 4 amazing grandkids that he adored. Pops, so he wanted to be called, was so proud of my daughters Olivia and Emma. He lived less than an hour away and would make visits over to my house to see them. He came to activities that the girls were involved in and always had his camera ready to take pictures. My dad loved to FaceTime my girls. He had this sixth sense, as we would call it in our family, where he always knew the worst possible times to call. Always. Whether it be during dinner, getting my girls ready for bed, or any other inopportune time. Though he always had the best intentions. The day I answered one of his FaceTime calls, he happened to be driving. Olivia and Emma said hello to him, and within seconds of our phone call, he hit the car in front of him. We watched it all. Glasses fall off, all of it. Olivia and Emma scolded him for days about that. How I wish to see a FaceTime call from Pop show up just one more time. Oh, he then proceeded to get an orange car. I think that was to warn others that he was coming. I asked Olivia and Emma if they wanted to say a little something in memory of Pops, and this is what they said. We've been with Pops for a long time, and he will always be in our hearts. My dad was sort of the absent-minded professor. He couldn't wait to tell me stories because he knew it would make me laugh. I will just leave you with a few stories that I call dadisms. If you knew my dad, these were typical things for him, such as the time he brought his TV remote in the car instead of his cell phone, or the time he tried to throw his gum out the window of his car but the window was shut, and the time he lost his iPad at some point in his life, bought a new one, only to find the other iPad in his trunk shortly after he bought the new one. Or my dad brought his camera to activities, as he always does, taking pictures and then realizing at the end of the day he never put the memory card in his camera. That was my dad. Dad, I love you. Olivia and Emma will always have a piece of your love in their hearts, and as Emma keeps saying, Pops is in heaven now.
Dear friends and family, today we gather to honor and celebrate the life of my dad, a beloved father, grandfather, husband, uncle, cousin, brother, and friend. For those of you who I've never met, I am Daniel, or as my dad used to call me, Dan. And just in case it's not obvious, I am Alan's youngest son. I know the hairline can sometimes throw people off, so just want to make sure that was clear. But all kidding aside, as I stand up here today, just days since my dad's passing, I still haven't come to terms with the fact that he's gone. I wake up every morning hoping it was just a bad dream. Our family has been through some tough times these past couple of years. First with the loss of my dad's brother Barry, then our beloved cousin Beth, and now my dad. Standing by his side in the hospital room, watching him take his last breath, was a surreal feeling and the hardest thing I've ever had to do. We were all so hopeful that he was going to fight this horrible liver disease and come out on the other side, just like he had done several years ago following his double bypass surgery. Unfortunately, the odds were not in his favor this time. But despite the physical toll that his illness took on him, he never lost his sense of humor. Such as the times the nurse on duty at the hospital would have to check his blood sugar and ask him which finger he wanted her to prick. I'm sure you can all guess which finger he chose. Every single time. And then there was this past Sunday, which would turn out to be the last time him and I got to spend together. We sat for hours watching the Masters, just the two of us in his room at the rehab center, where he didn't hesitate to yell at the TV every time a golfer missed a putt, or show just how much disdain he had for Phil Mickelson for selling out to Live Golf. At the time, I didn't know what it was about that day, but something in my gut was telling me not to leave. But I had been there most of the day. It was getting late, and I had to work in the morning, and I could see my dad was getting tired. I made sure he took all of his medication and had everything he needed by his side before it left, and we said goodbye. But just as I was about to turn the corner and leave, he said to me, "I love you." Although I knew how much he loved me and all of his children, those were words he didn't often say. But I'm so glad they were the last words we would say to each other. I know deep down that my dad was truly proud of his children and how we all grew up, but his grandchildren and step-grandchildren were the absolute light of his life. Elijah, Jonah, Olivia, Emma, Lindsay, and Jackson. Pops loved you guys so much, and I know he'll always be looking down on you. My dad loved his family more than anything in the world, except maybe for the 1966 Pontiac GTO that him and his brother Michael won in a raffle many years ago and unfortunately decided to sell. Speaking of Uncle Mike, I want to thank you for being there for him in his final days. They say twins have a special bond, unlike any other siblings, and it certainly showed in those final weeks you were by his side, so thank you. Mom, words can never express how much we appreciated you going to visit Dad whenever possible and being there by his side until the very end, even after those tough days when he'd curse at you for forcing him to take his meds. And finally, Lynn, you were there by his side every single day through thick and thin, somehow able to stay strong even on the worst days. From the bottom of our hearts, we can't thank you enough for everything you did for him. By the way, somehow my dad managed to marry 2 women. I can't find a girlfriend. But Pops, may you rest in peace, knowing that you fought a brave battle and that you always hold a special place in our hearts. I love you. Good luck.
Yeah. How in the world do I follow that? Field family, we need to stop meeting like this. I think several of us talked at the last one that we all get together under better circumstances. So I've decided that this summer we're going to have a barbecue at Rachel's house. And we'll all get together and do something and share some laughs, we promise. Speaking of family, I think if family and tradition were my father's true joys in life. Multiple times a week, we'd get phone calls, like my sibling said, so he could talk to the grandkids. He was always there to watch them play sports, no matter how long the drive. And when it came to tradition, he was just one of those guys, if you were supposed to do it, show up and do it. At an event like this, when a loved one, dies, you show up and you pay respects to the family. When there's a holiday, you show up. That was tradition, and that was my dad. As Ben's mentioned, when he would show up to those games to take pictures of my kids, of course, he had his camera in hand. He loved photography, really any kind of electronic gadget. He had gadgets way before it was cool to have gadgets, many, many, many years ago. He didn't know how to use most of those gadgets, but he loved them nonetheless. Every Passover was a tech support session, trying to fix one device or another. So it's only fitting that his last voicemail that I received from him was, "Sorry, I butt dialed you." True story, I saved it. I not only got the love of technology from my father, I also got my curls, and I also think my work ethic. As a child, most Saturdays and Sundays, he'd shake me out of bed, wake me up to come work at Randall Hardware. There weren't many people my age who knew how to repair a window, a screen, make a key, mix paint. But those were amazing lessons for a young boy to learn, and I saw what he put into that business. He got out of it. And that stuck with me. I probably gave him quite a headache the time I took the pricing gun, walked around the whole store, and tagged everything 99 cents. Once again, true story. Sorry, Uncle Michael, for the, you losing money that quarter. Yeah, we could have started the dollar store. That's exactly right. So I hadn't really thought about this until we were speaking with the rabbi last night, and I sat down to write this. But like I mentioned, he loved tradition, and he was a bit resistant to change in many ways. But he wasn't afraid to do that when it came to making a living. As has been talked about, he went from one business to the next, always providing for his family and always working hard. Yes, my father had many talents. I was trying to think of stories that maybe people don't know or you hadn't heard before. Not many people know this one, but I very vividly remember it. Many years ago, there was a friend or acquaintance of his who was opening up a kosher-style delicatessen somewhere in Providence. And I remember they asked him to come sit down and just test out the food. You're seeing a theme. Before they opened up. So I remember going with him one afternoon. We sat down at the restaurant, and they gave him a bagel and lox and some cream cheese. And he would tell him, a little lighter on this, maybe a little heavier on that, fold the lox like that. And he gave them feedback before they went and opened their store. You might call my father a lox sommelier. I'm going to wrap. What else is there to say about a man whose claim to fame was that he was one of the first customers at the Sandwich Hut in Providence in 1963 on the day they opened? He would tell us that story often. Before I go, I want to thank a few people like my siblings, the nurses and doctors on floor 6 of Rhode Island Hospital. This Temple Torat Yisrael community, who many of you may or may not know, we grew up in this temple. It was in another building in Cranston, but we were all bar mitzvahed in this community, and we certainly appreciate the love that, you know what I'm trying to say. The family and friends who came to visit him in the hospital, called or sent a note. My brother and sister, who traded days so he'd always have someone with him every single day. My Uncle Michael for being so involved in his brother's care from the moment he fell ill. And my Aunt Sharon, who was always there at the hospital with him. I love you guys and thank you. Once again, to my mother, Cheryl, look, you're either born a nurse or you're not. She was born a nurse. And it didn't matter what kind of issues they may have had. She was there rubbing his shoulder when he took his last breath. It may have also helped that she was actually an RN. And when she would say, Alan, if you don't take your medicine, I will personally give you an enema. that held some weight because she knew what she was talking about and could actually do it. And finally to Lynn, man, as was just mentioned, is fortunate enough to find one caring woman in their lives, let alone two. Nothing more that I could add to what my siblings say, but you're a blessing and his rock. In conclusion, I'll miss seeing that caller ID multiple times a week and hearing him. Open with, hey, pal. Love you. Pops.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rachel and Daniel, Adam. It's so special to hear each of your words spoken so much from the depths of your hearts, and equally as special to see how lovingly you all supported each other during your sharing. And now I'd like to call upon a very special man in our congregation, very special to me, Michael, Alan's twin brother.
Mom, it was not me. It was Alan. No, Dad, it was he. He did it. I had nothing to do with it. Alan, I am so sorry for the shenanigans I got you in trouble for. I am sure you remember the time when we were about 5 years old when I got you to put gas in Mom's car. But it was a water hose. I went to my mother very proud and told her, "We filled up your gas tank." She says, "You did what?" Mom started the car and billows of smoke poured out all the way to the gas station. Mom started the car, the mechanic fixed the car and he had a good laugh. The next day, I talked you into removing the windshield wipers from Mom's car. She came out very angry and says, "Okay, you two get in the car." We went to the gas station, and there was a different mechanic on duty then. He proceeded to repair the vehicle. The mechanic then said to my mother, "Lady, if you think that your kids removing the wipers was bad, I heard a lady came in yesterday who had twins that poured water in the gas tank. Can you believe that?" That was just one of many, many things I could talk about, but it would be too long. Seriously, I am grieving. Alan was not only a brother, but a twin brother. I feel as though I lost part of me. We had a connection that most siblings do not have. We did not always get along, but were always there for each other. On many occasions, we had some type of telepathy. One time, when meeting him at a restaurant in Boston, he got lost. He was trying to park the car, and I guess he didn't really know where the restaurant was. Everybody was waiting for him, so I said, "I'll go out and see if I can find him." So I went on the street, and it was very busy in Boston at the time. There were no cell phones there, so I couldn't call him. He was walking around trying to find the restaurant. I went out looking for him, and I closed my eyes and had an image he would be at the next corner. There he was. I rescued him again. We had a great life growing up. We had huge birthday parties every year with over 30 friends, and a lot of those friends are here right now. We spent summers at the Cape at our house in Onset. We were out on the bay every day. We had a close family there as well. Our cousins Frem, Maureen, Lisa, and Beth were like sisters to us. Alan was incredibly proud of his children, Adam, Daniel, and Rachel. When he married Lynn, he gained another extended family, Lynn's children and grandchildren, which has already been mentioned. He had a good time visiting them in Georgia. My daughters, Amanda and Laura, were very close to you and your kids. I know you cherished many family gatherings. Our conversations were always about his kids and grandkids. I find happiness in knowing that he will live on in all your memories. I want you kids to know I will always be there for you. I may not be a substitute for your father, but I think I have a strong resemblance. We were partners for over 20 years as owners of Randall Hardware. We shared closeness that was special. As we grew older, we realized how important it was to be there for each other and family. His family was paramount in his life. With Lynn, they had a wonderful life together. Now, quoting Ernest Hemingway, "Every man's life ends the same way. It is only the details of how he lived and how he died that distinguished one man from another. Until we meet again, rest in peace, my brother."
That was so special, Michael. Thank you for sharing that. Shared and spoken so lovingly as only a twin brother could have done. Almighty God, Lord of the living and the dead, the hearts of your children who mourn are heavy with grief. Give them comfort. They were overcome by pain and tears. Help them to remember the triumphs and the joys in the life of Alan Roy Field. They were overwhelmed by loss, O Lord. Help them to treasure what is theirs because Alan lived. Help them to meet grief with courage, to confront the angel of death with life. When despair threatens, when faith falters, sustain us all, O Lord, our refuge and our strength, our ever-present help. And let us say, Amen. The next portion of our service consists of a very special and meaningful prayer in our Jewish tradition. And as a review, well, unfortunately, our congregation has seen some losses this year, so I don't really have to review this for our Jewish group. But for those who are not in our tradition, I would like to share a little glimpse of what this prayer means. This is a very special prayer asking for God's protection and compassion upon the soul of the deceased. And as such, it has a very deep and special meaning. This is the same prayer that we say at least 4 times a year in our communal services on the 3 festival occasions of Passover, the commemoration of the Exodus from Egypt, Shavuot, the receiving of the Torah and 10 Commandments, and Sukkot, the festival of booths, or tabernacles, as sometimes it's referred to. And on the holiest day of the year, on Yom Kippur, when we remember all of those who died in bringing us here to this day and as part of our tradition. And as is traditional, I will chant this first in Hebrew, using Alan's Hebrew name, and then give a translation in English. And it is traditional to ask you, please, if it's possible to stand, to rise at this time. El male rachamim, shochein b'amromim, hamitzei menucha nechona, tachat kanfei hashchina, mimalot kedushim, kedushim utorim, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת אברהם בן פסח בחנה והלך לעולמו בגן עדן מנוחתו Ana balarachamim, hastirei v'seter knafecha leolamim, utzror b'tzror achayim at nishmato, utzror b'tzror achayim, utzror b'tzror achayim. Et nishmato Adonai u'nechalato v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar. Please join me in singing Amen. Amen. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence amongst the holy and pure to the soul of Avram. And it's Avram, not Avraham. Avram, we found out from the Ketubah. Avram ben Pesach v'chana. Beautiful Hebrew name. Alan, and I didn't find out until I read it in the sheet, Roy Field, who has gone to his eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that he indeed performed in the land of the living. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. The Lord is his portion. May he now rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. And this time we'll ask you to be seated for just a moment, and we'll call upon Rebecca from Shalom Mortuary to give us instructions as to how we will proceed from this location to the service at the cemetery.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. You're welcome. Hello, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm going to escort the family back to the family room to collect their items. We are going to have Mr. Field brought to the hearse by my staff. If you would, please rise. Out of respect for Mr. Field being returned to the hearse, my staff will be escorting him out. Honor Guard, you will be following him. Those of you who are not in the Honor Guard and who are coming to the cemetery, you will be seeing my staff with ties that kind of look like this. They're going to have directions from the temple to the cemetery, as well as orange funeral tags that will go in the in the passenger side windshield of your cars. You will be turning on your flashers, your headlights for your safety, and we'll be going as a cortege from here to the cemetery. Staff, thank you so much.
Is there going to be a motorcycle guard at all?
There is no.
Okay, so
no
do people stop at red lights?
So, for those of you who are coming with us through the cortege, if we do run into a red light, most of the time we are allowed to roll through them with caution. However, if you take directions from here to the cemetery, I encourage you to exercise driver safety. If you do run into a red light, please pause. We'll be at the cemetery and we will wait for as many people as we can, okay? Thank you all so much.